From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. The United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP24, has begun in Poland with dire warnings that time is running out to save human civilization from catastrophe. A number of world leaders and personalities told the opening ceremony that action is needed now. The veteran naturalist David Attenborough said climate change is the most serious threat faced by human beings in their modern history.
Right now, we're facing a man-made disaster of global scale, our greatest threat in thousands of years, climate change. If we don't take action, the collapse of our civilizations and the extinction of much of the natural world is on the horizon.
The window of opportunity to act is closing very fast. Time is running out, and we must move quickly to have any hope of capping global warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial age.
The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres told the conference that almost everyone understood the gravity of the threat, so it was extraordinary that the world continues to head in the wrong direction.
According to the World Meteorological Organization, the 20 warmest years on record have been in the past 22 years, with the top 4 in the past 4 years. The concentration of carbon dioxide is the highest it has been in 3 million years, and the emissions are now growing again. Climate change is the most important issue we face. It affects all our plans for sustainable development and a safe, secure and prosperous world. So it's hard to comprehend why we are collectively still moving too slowly and even sometimes moving in the wrong direction. The IPCC's special report tells us that we still have time to limit temperature rise, but that time is running out.
Jamaica's Prime Minister has called for more action and less talk on climate change, which poses a serious threat to small island states. Andrew Holness told the G20 meeting in Argentina that the small Caribbean states do not have the luxury of engaging in philosophical debate on the issue. Holness nudged G20 leaders to make good on the agreement to mobilize $100 billion per annum to address climate change. This is a call for Jamaica to consider a closed season for the parrot fish. Government Senator Matthew Samura has made the suggestion in a bid to save Caribbean reefs from extinction. Parrot fish keeps the amount of algae down to beneficial levels by eating them. However, the marine species is heavily overfished in the Caribbean. Caribbean coral reefs generate over $3 billion annually. Experts estimate these reefs will disappear in 20 years if the fish population isn't restored. Earlier, we spoke to our correspondent, Wadmore Makokowa, at the climate change conference in Poland. We asked him what the big issues facing the COP24 are.
I think, as you have heard, the Secretary General, the United Nations Secretary General, are making a clarion call for nations to really be serious about combating climate change. So these are the very topical issues that people, all the countries that are represented here are discussing and talking about. And the major issues that are being discussed here is to measure and see if countries have really done much to beat the Paris Agreement target of reaching zero carbon emissions by 2030. But now the situation, through assessing, I'm actually seeing that all countries here, they are agreeing that time is running out and there's really no time to waste now. So I think those are the major highlights that are happening today with the official opening of the COP24. And we've also seen developing countries also trying to make their voice heard in terms of asking for aid in terms of making sure that there is justice in the allocation of resources. And we've also seen that there are some selected developed countries which are also saying we need to negotiate. Like a country like Poland, where we are right now, is a country that heavily relies on coal. And now with the call to reduce carbon emissions, they're saying people need to negotiate because their economy is heavily reliant on thermal power production.
Uruguay has denied asylum to the former president of Peru, Alan Garcia. The Uruguayan president Tabaré Vázquez announced Garcia must leave its diplomatic premises at once. The former Peruvian president is accused of receiving $100,000 from Odebrecht over the construction of the Metro Lima. He has been in the Uruguayan ambassador's residence in Peru since November 17.
En Perú funcionan.
The three powers of the state work freely in Peru, and it is the judiciary that is conducting the investigations of possible economic crimes of the former president of Peru.
Our correspondent Mateo Grille has the details from Uruguay.
This morning, Uruguayan President Tabaré Vázquez held a joint media conference with his foreign minister. They announced that Uruguay will not grant asylum to former Peruvian President Alan Garcia. Garcia had asked for political asylum last November 17th. He did so during a visit to the Uruguayan ambassador's residence. Since that time, Uruguay's government has been considering the request. In fact, Uruguay asked Peru's government for information on the Garcia case. They've also requested that Garcia be given the opportunity to have his say. After analyzing all the information at hand, Uruguay's government denied asylum to the former president of Peru. As such, Alan Garcia has already left the ambassador's residence.
Thank you, Mateo, for that report. The Vice President of Ecuador, Maria Alejandra Vicuña, has been temporarily relieved of her duties. This after the scandal that involved her in an alleged network of illicit payments for her party. According to Vicuña and President Lenin Moreno, she has been suspended from her duties to allow her to focus on her defense. The suspension will last until December 31st. The Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is in Venezuela on an official visit. Erdogan laid a wreath at the Pantheon in Caracas, where the heroes of Venezuela's independence are buried. He is now holding talks with President Nicolás Maduro to strengthen cooperation between the two nations. Turkey will share knowledge with Venezuela to help in its economic recovery program. Erdogan expressed his support for the Bolivarian government against the economic war and sanctions it is suffering.
I am positive that my friend Maduro, thanks to the support of the Venezuelan people, is going to resist the attacks the country is suffering. I want my visit to be considered as a symbol of collaboration of the Turkish with the Venezuelan people.
The 18th special meeting of the heads of government of the Caribbean community is underway in Trinidad and Tobago. The summit will focus on issues surrounding the implementation of the CARICOM single market and economy. The CSME seeks to create a single economic space in the region by removing restrictions.
We have to go back to the basis. Can we survive independently? And I don't think there's any scenario that any one of the countries in the CARICOM can survive by themselves. And we need to be part of a group, and hopefully today, with the leadership of Ms. Motley, that we can regain that momentum that we had many, many years ago, and solve some of the differences that we have, and to make sure that this is an equitable place, and that it's strengthening our region and making us more competitive against the rest of the world.
The other issues we have to talk about, the issue of transportation, the fact that we have so many problems getting to each other's countries in the region is a serious problem. Sometimes it's easier to go to Miami and London than it is to go to some islands in the Caribbean from Grenada. So clearly we can't be talking single market and economy and not have means of making contact with each other physically and otherwise.
Guyana's oil reserve estimates have been hiked by 25%. This after U.S. oil giant ExxonMobil made its 10th discovery offshore in the South American country. Department of Energy Director Dr. Mai Beyond said this latest find is expected to facilitate substantial social and economic improvements. This discovery reinforces Guyana's potential to produce more than 3/4 million barrels of oil daily by 2025.
much of the money is basically...
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has met with the incoming Mexican Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard in Washington, D.C. In a tweet, Ebrard explained that they discussed their shared commitment to address the common challenges and opportunities for the future. This as thousands of migrants wait to cross the U.S.-Mexican border. After heavy rain caused appalling conditions in the main migrant shelter in Tijuana, the Mexican authorities have been trying to move them to another site, but many migrants are refusing to move to one of Tijuana's most dangerous neighborhoods.
A hunger strike is the last resort for those who have been part of a long and arduous journey to reach the U.S.-Mexico border.
We haven't had where to sleep. We've been sleeping on the streets, and then our shelter flooded. It was probably caused by sewage water, because we have skin rashes all over our bodies.
Not far from El Chaparral, crossing in Tijuana, 15 migrants have gone on hunger strike to pressure the U.S. government into expediting the asylum request process.
We need this process to move quicker because they are taking too long. They have the capacity to process nearly 300 visas a day, but only processing between 40 and 60.
Migrants are living in uncertainty. These roadblocks, which to some may appear minimal, to them represent the entire future.
There are people who want to stay here in Mexico to get work visas, but they are unable to pay for the photos needed or for the other requirements. They have walked 2,000 miles and have spent what little money they had.
The new administration of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has announced they will launch a program to give aid to migrants. One of the first points in the agenda is to fix the shelters, particularly in Tijuana, so that they may be restocked and are in working condition.
Mexico's new president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has set up a true commission to investigate the case of 43 students who disappeared from Ayotzinapa. López Obrador signed the presidential decree in the presence of the students' relatives. Deputy Secretary of Human Rights, Alejandra, will head the commission. Following AMLO's swearing-in ceremony on Saturday, and for the first time ever, Mexico's presidential residence has been opened up to the public. Just hours after taking office, López Obrador officially opened the doors of Los Pinos to ordinary citizens. Within 2 days, the residence has already received over 85,000 visitors. Many have expressed their surprise at the opulence on display inside the residence, which includes a 28-seat dining room and a private movie theater.
This is unbelievable, to be able to walk through that door and be able to understand what President López Obrador tried to tell us, that this belongs to the people. It doesn't belong to the presidents. This belongs to us.
I think this is fabulous. My heart is filled with joy because I never thought in my entire life, and I'm 65, that I would step a foot into this place.
And Mexico's presidential plane will soon be sold, according to the government of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. The Mexican president said during his electoral campaign that he will put the plane up for sale as it was a symbol of excess. The interior of the plane includes a presidential bedroom and a marble-lined bathroom. It was purchased for over $350 million in 2012.
This is unbelievable, to be able to walk through that door and be able to understand what President López Obrador tried to tell us, that this belongs to the people. It doesn't belong to the presidents. This belongs to us.
I think this is fabulous. My heart is filled with joy because I never thought in my entire life, and I'm 65, that I would step a foot into this place.
Chilean police who tried to disperse protesting indigenous vendors came under a volley of vegetables. Officers took cover as the Mapuche women showered them with the edible projectiles. The vendors are demanded the right to continue plying their trade on the streets of Temuco. A new law which came into effect on December 1st banned unlicensed street sellers from operating in the area. one of the former police officers involved in the murder of Mapuche Camilo Cartillanca in Chile, has claimed he was forced to lie and give false testimony. Carlos Alarcón said during a video shared on social media that there are facts from the case that haven't yet come to light. He denies having acted as a criminal during the raid on Temucucuy on November 14, and highlighted he doesn't want the national police to be trashed by this scandal. Maya Quechí people traveled to the capital of Guatemala over the weekend to demand that the lands that were taken away be returned.
Ancestral authorities and Maya Quechí people from northern Guatemala traveled 400 kilometers to the Supreme Court. 2 years have passed since they presented a legal action in which they demand that the lands that they have been living in for centuries be returned. In 1905, they were taken away by the municipality.
There are
almost 16,000 people living in these 36 communities. The government can't do this. We are making the claim before the Supreme Court so that they give us property titles.
According to the Quechí, 36 areas of land have been taken over by the municipality of Chiniqué in the last century. The action was conducted without previous consultation and with the approval of the dictatorship of the time. They affirm they have given evidence to the Supreme Court to prove that their ancestors have lived there since the 17th century.
We have the concrete basis of our history. In 1785, our ancestors and our grandparents were already living here, and we have all the evidence. We come from generations of Quechí people. We were born here, and we will die here.
Cases like this, in which indigenous populations claim the right to their ancestral lands, which were taken away from them deceptively, still dominate the country's courts. The majority are land extensions which were purchased from the Spanish crown.
This conflict is shared because they took lands away using the laws of the time, legally displacing the land's communities through corrupt policies. There have been many conflicts today that agricultural institutions haven't been able to resolve.
The Maya Quechí people say they will not allow others to take away what belongs to them, and that they inherited the lands from their ancestors for future generations. They require property titles in order to have legal ownership of the place where they live.
More news in a minute. Stay with us.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. French ambulance drivers have joined the nationwide protest against President Macron's high fuel taxes and the rising cost of living. France has been rocked for weeks by protests against the government's tax policies, which the protesters say are hurting the poor. Macron has instructed his prime minister to hold talks with the demonstrators in an attempt to end the unrest. Meanwhile, the opposition is calling on the government to suspend the reforms.
The first response prior to everything else is to say that for the moment, everything stops. That is to say the taxes that are planned next January can't intervene. There must be a moratorium on taxes before any discussion. That is the only way to make this discussion credible. After that, we discuss and discuss widely. We are not just discussing ecological taxation. That would be too simple, and it's not about a conflict between ecology and taxation, but more broadly, how do we give purchasing power back to the frame?
The far-right Vox party in Spain has won 12 seats in elections for the regional parliament in Andalusia. It's the first time the far-right has managed to win seats in the chamber since the country's return to democracy in the 1970s. The socialists received the most votes but failed to secure an overall majority. As nationalism sweeps through the country, left-wing parties are struggling to maintain their support. Demonstrators have protested outside the UK Parliament ahead of a key vote on the Brexit deal. Brandishing banners and flags, anti-Brexiteers demanded another referendum. Parliament will begin 5 days of debate on Tuesday, and the final vote will be held on December 11. The UK government has published a summary of legal advice which falls short of the full document demanded by the House of Commons.
If we sign the deal next week, if it's ratified next week, we're joined by an international treaty, committed by an international treaty, to remain in the European Union from which there is no escape. And I'm hoping that the House of Commons will vote it down.
I don't want the deal. The only deal I want is to remain in the EU. We have the best deal. It's the best deal that any country has, actually.
A human rights law group is calling for tribunals for crimes against Rohingya. A report based on more than 1,000 interviews with Rohingya refugees states that there were grounds to believe that the Myanmar military committed crimes against humanity and genocide. The report also revealed that Rohingya Muslims were victims of mass shootings, aerial strikes, gang rapes, and torture.
Can someone speak to us and then have the head
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has met with Pope Francis in the Vatican. During the private meeting, the two leaders discussed the United States' decision to merge its consulate with its new embassy in Jerusalem. Abbas thanked the Pope for his support for the Palestinian people. The Vatican recognized the state of Palestine in January 2016. The United Nations Special Envoy for Yemen has arrived in Sana'a to accompany Houthi negotiators to Sweden, where peace talks will take place. These are the first peace negotiations between the Saudi-backed government and Houthis since 2016, after the early attempt failed in September. 50 wounded Houthi fighters were evacuated from medical treatment as one of the demands by the rebels to start peace talks. The country is facing a severe humanitarian crisis as a result of the war. Kurdish women have created a self-sustainable women-only village in the north of Syria. The village of Sinwar aims to provide women, mainly widows with children, with a place where they can find freedom and security. Men are allowed to visit but cannot stay. The project is seen as an alternative society and advocates for communal and ecological living.
The main goal of this village is to offer freedom to these women and let them live inside a family and a society. The idea of building the village could be a response to those who would like to limit or control women's freedom. In total, there are 30 homes, an academy, a school, a hospital, a store, a bakery, and a common kitchen for the whole village.
Kenyans are outraged that the U.S. Patent Office granted Disney the trademark on the popular Swahili phrase Hakuna Matata. Activists accuse the U.S. entertainment giant of stealing their culture. The trademark means the phrase cannot be used without prior approval from Disney. The phrase, which means no problem, was popularized in the Disney movie The Lion King 24 years ago. And with this, we come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories you can find at our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.